Hello and welcome to the Flowery Folk podcast. In this episode, I wanted to talk about the pressure on florists to become foam free and share some tips that I have to help you obviously navigate this within your business. Before we get into the episode, I did just want to let you know that I am recording this out in my garden. I wanted to share with you in some way, the beautiful environment that I'm in is surrounded by nature. That does mean there may be some bird noises from time to time, possibly the rooster down in the chicken pen. But if you find that distracting, please let me know and we will move into a studio. It is just something that I've always wanted to do with this podcast, is have it in a surrounding that I, obviously love, and maybe some way I can share that a little bit with you. But enough of that. So in the episode, as I said, I wanted to talk to you about the pressures on all of us within the industry to reduce the amount of foams that we're using in our business. Now, honestly, you really need to be living under a rock not to know that there is a massive push from within the industry to become foam free. Now, I obviously totally agree that this is necessary, but I also understand that there are a lot of challenges that some florists face in actually being able to make this happen within their current businesses. So in this episode, I wanted to look a little closer at this and share with you some of my personal challenges and thoughts around eliminating floral foam within my own business. And hopefully it will help you sort of come up with a strategy to do the same in your business. I need to be very clear though, before we sort of delve in, is that I actually still do use floral foam in my business. Not obviously that I want to, but I have found that in some designs and in some situations, there really is no suitable substitute that I find works. So I am a wedding and event florist, and I'm constantly asked to hang flowers off structures. We set up in like 35-degree heat, in scorching direct sun, high humidity, sometimes in bloody gale force winds. It is just crazy. Sometimes the things that we're doing to create beautiful weddings for our couples up here in the tropical beaches of far north Queensland. It is something that I am still using within my business in limited amounts, but I just wanted to be clear. I'm not going to be pushing 100%. I do realize that this is something that each person needs to think about. All right. So probably before we get too involved in this, I thought it would be important. Wow, can you hear that? That is the curlew that's taken up residence around my house, and I really hope it goes away soon because it can be really noisy. Anyway, yeah, he's stopped now. So let's keep going. So yes, for those of you not in the flowery industry, I really should explain what all the fuss is about that green sort of smooshy stuff that your flowers sometimes come in. So essentially, it is a single-use plastic. It's made from petrochemicals and all sorts of nasty stuff and is adding to our pollution woes. Okay, so despite some fancy marketing tactics from some of the manufacturers of this product making claims about biodegradability, it is still plastic at the end of the day and remains plastic even after degrading. It's actually a really nasty microplastic. Now, knowing this, you might wonder why the majority of florists are still using it. And to be honest, it completely changed our industry when it hit the market back in the 50s. It allowed florists to arrange flowers in gravity-defying ways, all the while keeping them very well hydrated. It allows for quick construction. It holds flowers in place extremely well, no matter what sort of crazy angle you might put them in, and it keeps them moist the whole time. It seemed like the dream mechanic, but obviously now we're aware of the damage that these sorts of plastics are doing to our environment. And in some way, this dream is becoming a bit of a nightmare. So why are we still using it? Well, to be honest, Most of us are that reliant on it, and what it allows us to create, that moving away is very difficult because there is nothing else like it at the moment that does what it does. So I myself try to use alternative mechanics, which I'm going to talk about in a while, but there are times when I know the alternative won't do what I need it to do, and foam is actually going to be the best option. So at the end of the day, I need to know that what I create for my events is going to do exactly what my client needs it to do. So that's obviously look amazing, be cost effective, and last the duration of the event. I do feel a lot of pressure to stop altogether, but I do know that the quality of my work will suffer and my designs will have to change in style somewhat, and using alternatives will obviously cause a huge change in the efficiency within my business. So this is why I think it's important to sort of create a bit of a plan and implement steps to eventually remove it, or the majority of it, from our businesses. So one aspect of moving away from floral foam is how it will affect the overall quality of my work. I think I'm a pretty damn good designer, and I have a great understanding of the elements and principles of design. I am very specific about what I place where and how these placements affect the overall success of the design. I'm also very particular with regards to good mechanics and the durability of designs that I create. That is, that the designs do not fall apart under the stresses of transport or the wind or the heat, you know. When I've tried various alternatives for my centerpiece designs, for instance, the flowers didn't stay where I wanted them to be, and essentially the design fell apart during transportation. So this is mainly lack of knowledge, I suppose. And it was because I used chicken wire structures within the same sort of low bowl vessels that I'd previously used foam. Unfortunately, the bowls were just too low to allow enough layering of chicken wire to hold the stems correctly. So anyone that's used chicken wire knows that, you know, the more layers, the more stable the design's going to be. This led to the first part of my plan to move away from foam. I needed to look at my vessels. So making the change means purchasing a new series of ceramics with higher sides to allow for the additional support needed for the chicken wire layers. So using these different vessels as my new standard will mean that I can eliminate floral foam from my centerpieces without affecting the overall quality of the product I design. Okay, this took a lot of time and experimentation, not to mention cost in purchasing new, more expensive vessels. However, this is hopefully the right solution for me. Okay, some other items I found suitable solutions for, including the aisle flowers. So again, these were previously for me created in low bowls. And again, I had the same issue as the table flowers, that they just didn't stay together when I swapped over to chicken wire. So I've now found these very long, deep, rectangular containers, which allow for a lot of chicken wire structure within the vessel. And this seems to be working really well. It's holding the flowers how I want them. I can design them in the studio and transport them to site. And they're staying together beautifully in the high winds that sometimes happen on the beach. Okay, but both of these solutions lead to my next issue. The look or style of the designs that we create might need to change if moving away from floral foam. So when you're using chicken wire mechanics, for example, you can't necessarily get the same precise placement as you can in floral foam, and your designs may look a little looser or a little bit more open. There's a lot more movement within them. So that is something to think about. So another sort of area of design which will need a rethink are also those arrangements that need to be attached to arches or frames. So before, we would just whack in the flowers into a funeral bat in the studio, take them to site and attach to the structure. This isn't really possible with alternative mechanics. So now I'm more inclined to recommend to my clients things such as floor florals that can be created in vessels with chicken wire rather than being attached to the frame. There are alternative products such as Oshun Pouch that do allow for you to place on the side of frames or structures. However, these tend to need to be created in situ rather than in the studio and transported. And so there you guessed it, that leads to another change in the efficiency of the way we work. I am a one-woman show, so I have to be super efficient with my site setups. And it's not always practical to spend 3 hours on site setting up a large scale piece in chicken wire and water in buckets, for example, because obviously that takes a lot of time. And I usually only have a very short window for setups. Okay, so that would mean for me more staff to get jobs done. Again, something not all of us have access to. So honestly, this is something that I'm still experimenting with to find suitable substitutions for my larger installation pieces. I do have an idea of making a heavy duty frame structure with buckets attached that will transport well to site. I've done some experiments with it, but it does lead to the fact that my vehicle isn't probably the right sort of height for it. Anyway, I'm still playing around with ideas for sort of larger structures and not using foam. And obviously, I'll keep you posted on that. Something that I have noticed with my experimentations with chicken wire, especially for larger installations, is that you seem to require more product. Might just be me, but I'm finding because as it isn't easily placed where exactly you need it, and you also need to cover lots of buckets and vessels, sometimes you need a lot more product. So unless you have vessels that are obviously part of the design, such as bamboo, that works really well. You can see them. But if you're just trying to cover black buckets or other vessels, it does tend to use, I find, a little more product. So something else that I am obviously aware of is that I no longer have a retail flower shop. But obviously, I did own one for many years, and I know what sort of products are typically created in shops. And I believe there are several areas that could be quickly changed and the foam removed completely from those. So firstly, one thing that I still see foam being used a lot, maybe it's just up here, I don't know, but used as a hydration base for bouquets. Completely unnecessary in my mind. And swapping over to a water bubble or like even moist paper wrap is easy to do. Secondly, disposable boxes, aka the mini box. Anyone that's known me for a while knows that I'm really not a fan of these things. However, I do understand that they have become the backbone of many flower shops. I would suggest that, moving away from these into ceramic or glass vessels, especially for the higher price point options, because the price of the vessel can be quite easily absorbed into that. So whether you use chicken wire or just a bouquet straight into a vase as an alternative, that's totally up to you. It also gives you the ability to offer your customer a recycling or reusing option, which means that they could bring back their vase. You would offer maybe some sort of small reward to get them to return it to be used again. So this is great because it gives your customer a reason to return to your shop to purchase again, which obviously we all want that. We want our customers to return. So that's something to consider. Wreaths are a big user of floral foam. And in most cases, a wreath, because it doesn't need to last a very long time, as it is a the tribute. Really, it only needs to look amazing for a day, for the day of the service in most instances. So possibly think about creating wreaths onto vine bases. That to me would be a great alternative. It can be tied using jute or paper covered wire. And if you're doing a full covered floral wreath, you're probably not going to use much more material, and it wouldn't take any more time if you're using the correct sort of binding technique. You would obviously need to select tough material that won't wilt quickly. And yes, you will need to work slightly differently, as I said, but it is a great way of creating an all-over floral wreath. It's, quite a simple technique to learn. So another thing with the vine bases, if you're buying them from the right places, they can be relatively inexpensive, especially if you can buy in bulk. Or, if you're really up for it, you can make your own if you've got access to some sort of beautiful vine. You can also use the wire wreath frames in much the same way as you could use a vine one. So just something to consider. If you own a retail shop, I would sort of recommend that you just take a look at the usage of foam and in what products you're using it in. And can you possibly make some small changes over time so that it isn't such a huge impact on your customers' expectations? We need to consider that, and your staff skills. So maybe each month focus on selling an alternative product, and over time it will slowly change. So just a suggestion on how you can do that. Before we finish up, I also wanted to share with you some of my thoughts on a few of the sort of more common alternative products out there, in a hope that maybe you might find it useful, and also give you some ideas on how to best experiment with them, and even that they're out there. Because I know when I talk about some of these products, some people have never even heard of them. So these are some products that I've personally tried and would recommend that you give a go as well. And also my thoughts on how I think it holds up. So probably the most common one I see a lot here in Australia is the rock wool or the floral wool. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm not really a fan. So why that is I find it doesn't have a really great hold of the stems, and I find that things tend to fall out. So they are very difficult to insert the stems into, and a lot of the time you are required to sort of pre-poke the hole with a skewer, or, screw the stem. If you've got a hard stem, screw that stem into the foam. So I find it a little bit difficult to use. I know some people have a lot of success with it and they use it for everything. But me personally, I have struggled. But, as I said, this is just my opinion. Another product that is popping up is called Oshun Pouch. Now, this is essentially a plant-based plastic bag filled with a sort of peat compost material. You poke holes in it and you let it absorb the water. It is really easy to insert stems into, even delicate stems, and it's relatively easy to work with. However, it doesn't really provide long-term hydration, and I've found that some delicate stems don't even sort of last the event. So that's something to think about. Another big drawback for this product is it's expensive. So at the moment, the only way we can get it here in Australia is through a supplier based in the UK. So I paid total per pouch, including freight, I paid $10 per pouch. I think it was like $5 per pouch and $5 for the freight, something along those lines. So obviously that is a big expense, and it's not something you're going to use in sort of lower priced items. Another drawback with the Oshun Pouch, unfortunately, it is the one size and you can't cut it down. Obviously, again, it's not going to fit every situation. Lastly, I did find that it didn't transport well, especially those sort of heavier stems. They seem to wobble out and become a bit loose. And obviously, once the structure of the pouch has sort of wobbled a little bit, that stem's not held as well as it should be. So when I use this product, I do allow extra time to create the designs on site. That's sort of the best way that I've done this. So I do believe that this product would be fantastic for funeral work, especially casket sprays. You may need to add some additional support for transport, such as chicken wire around the pouch, which is what I tend to do now. But for most sort of standard to small size casket sprays, this product would be amazing. Think about bringing or trialing it possibly for that style of work in your shop. Chicken wire. Now, this is something that's been around forever. Basically, you just sort of create a ball or layers of wire in your vessel and it supports the stems. It's a great mechanic for vessels as long as you have a vessel deep enough to support the chicken wire layers, okay? Chicken wire for a mechanic for installations I find is a little more tricky. So there are lots and lots of videos out there on YouTube, Instagram, where people are basically just poking flowers into like a long structure of chicken wire. Now, for me, I've found that this really isn't, a great solution because you will find if you're doing it outdoors, you're obviously exposed to, the wind, the heat, and they're going to affect your flowers. So if you're going to be thinking about using chicken wire for structures, just make sure that you're getting, again, enough layers. So, it's not just the ball of chicken wire. You've got lots of chicken wire sort of layers in amongst it that you can poke those stems through to hold them securely, especially for wind. Another thing that I find is a bit of an issue with this is obviously no hydration, which is great if you're indoors or in a cooler environment. It's probably not an issue for installations because they're short term. So you would need to consider things like if you need hydration, you're going to need to definitely think of adding in buckets or water vessels into the structure. So again, this means the overall design is a little different. You will have a much looser look, and it does also mean you can't do it in the studio and take it to site. It has to be done in situ on site, okay? Something else to consider, yes, with chicken wire in vessels, it definitely is a lot more messy to deliver. So because obviously you've got a vessel with chicken wire full of water, it's going to sort of slop all over the place. So whereas in the past, I would always pack my centerpieces in old flower boxes, this obviously doesn't work now. I do have to have plastic sort of container things. They're big rectangular flat containers, which I put my centerpieces in. So then during the transport, if the water spills out, it's obviously not going all through the car. It's contained. And it does mean, obviously, when I get them to site, I'm going to have to top them up with water, and they're obviously going to need a little bit of adjustment because things move during transport. Another mechanic that can be used similar to chicken wire are things such as willow or vine, some sort of bendy sticks or vine. So you just sort of create a ball of some sort of shape with lots and lots of little layers for the stems to be sort of supported by. And then you can just obviously pop that into your vase or vessel. Sometimes not a great solution for longer term use because obviously that vine may increase the bacterial growth in the water, but it's something to think about anyway. So I hope I've given you something to think about. And I also hope that you will consider coming up with some sort of strategy to reduce the use of foam within your business. As I said, it won't be easy and it isn't something that you should do overnight. But I do believe that if you start taking smaller steps now, over the course of your, the next sort of 12 months, 2 years, it's going to have a massive difference on your business in a very positive way. We also need to remember that other industries have had government regulation minimising the use of single-use plastics in their business. Think fast food, retail, that sort of thing. So I truly believe it is only a matter of time until we have some sort of government agency step in and say, look, guys, enough's enough. So I really believe it's important to start a plan think about where you're using the foam, where can it easily be removed, which designs would be the easiest to swap to something else, what new vessels or sundries do you need to make the change, and maybe you need some more training, or maybe your staff needs some more training. But remember, just start small and take it step by step, and it won't feel like such a huge burden on yourself and your business. It's also important to remember that all floristry businesses are different, and some people will find it much easier than others to make changes within their business. And really, it's totally okay. You know your business better than anyone else, and you know what you can and cannot achieve within your business. But as I keep saying, just have a look at it, see what you can achieve, what you can change, and just start those little steps sooner rather than later. Thank you for listening for our episode today. I hope you found it helpful. And if you've enjoyed it, or maybe not, please reach out, give me your feedback. I'd love to know what you think. I'd also love to know of any particular topics that you would like me to discuss, whether it be, just random things in the flowery industry, or specific mechanics, or, business information, whatever it is. I'm happy to give it a go, I suppose. Also, if you know someone that might enjoy this podcast, please share it with them. And also, I would love to have more guests on this show. That's a real big part of what I want to achieve with this podcast, is sharing stories of people within our flowering industry, whether they are florists, growers, anything that has anything to do with flowers. If you think they've got an interesting story, please let them know about us, get them to reach out and say hi. Now, the best way to contact me is on probably Instagram, either at the Posy Crew or at the Flowery Folk. Otherwise, pop over to either website. There's contact forms, contact details there as well. So thank you so much for listening today, and I look forward to chatting to you next time. See ya.